very glad you're all wide awake after that little yoga session. Thank you very much. So I wonder, my thought today is about the thinking body, which actually was the final slide of Stuart's session there. And I wanted you to have a think about how much of your day, maybe, is spent doing this. Spent walking to a meeting, to lunch, to the tube, A to B, late, running a little bit because you're late. Mine is like this all the time. I'm always running, I'm walking really fast, A to B. Then you stop and you get a coffee, stop and you do some work, stand on the tube, go home and you cook some dinner. And your body does what your brain needs it to do. Your body is sort of a vehicle for your brain to do things, the real things. Because we still live in a sort of Cartesian world of thought, where the brain does the really important work, and it's separate from the body. The body is the machine that drives the brain, and it sort of drips and leaks, and we feed it, and it helps our brain. And I think that it can do more than that. I think the body is very intelligent and can think for itself and be responsive. The Italian neurobiologist Antonio DiMaggio has done a lot of research into this over many years and concludes, it sounds so unsurprising, but it's profound, that we're embodied, not just embrained. We're not just embrained, we're embodied. And our whole body contributes to who we are. So I just have a couple of little examples of these. So one thing is body language, very simple thing. Our bodies communicate with each other in ways that our heads don't deal with. It's our body that communicates. So for example, if you see somebody whose spine is slumped and their head is hanging and their shoulders are rolled, they're dragging their feet, then you might read them as depressed or have received some bad news or they're bored or whatever. As opposed to someone whose spine is straight, their skull is high on their spine, their feet are planted, their shoulders are open, they're alert, positive, open, ready to go. And there are so many body language things that I won't go into. But we can read that, we understand that easily. Earlier this morning, the Daniel Kahneman book, Thinking Fast and Slow, was mentioned, and I'm going to recommend that as well. I'm sure many of you have read it. But there's a study that he shares in it by John Barr, where he worked with New York University students, split them into two groups. And he gave them many, many groups of words that they needed to fit into sentences. They seemed to be arbitrary words into little sentences of 4 or 5 words. And with one group, without telling them, they weren't aware of it, and at the end they were questioned and they had no awareness of it whatsoever, he began to feed in words that alluded to old age. So things like brittle, grey, Florida, bald. And then both the groups got moved on to another room for another experiment. And what the students didn't know was that the experiment was actually the walking down the corridor, because John Barr and his scientists measured how long it took the two groups to walk down the corridor. And the group who had been given the words about old age that had never been specified walked significantly slower down the corridor than the people who hadn't been given those words. Subconsciously, their body had responded to this knowledge by emulating something that we think of as old. We walk slowly. So their body thought that for itself. A very old example is from the philosopher and psychologist William James, writing at the end of the 1800s, who said, how would we know, if we met a bear in the woods, how would we know that we were afraid, except that our heartbeat quickens, we begin to sweat, the hairs on our arms raise on end, our stomach tightens, our body responds to the object of fear and tells our head, I'm really afraid, we're afraid right now, let's go. And our head is the second thing to know it. Our body does it first. So these are just some examples, and there's so much research that's been done on this in the last 100, 150 years and kind of rectifying this Cartesian thing about the thinking body. Now, I'm a choreographer, I make dances, and I dance, and there's a choreographer whose work I love, and I think you should look up on YouTube, Jonathan Burrows, who makes very simple but funny work. And he says that choreography is the negotiations with the patterns that the body is thinking. So choreography is the negotiations with the patterns that the body is thinking. And I'm going to expand on that a little bit in terms of dancing. So maybe you know this experience. You've had a bad day at work. you maybe had an argument with somebody there, or you've had some bad news, or something has stressed you out about work. You get home, your body is full of anxiety and stress, and you feel all tight and your head is going a million miles an hour, and you put on your trainers and you go for a run to get some headspace. You just say, I just need to go clear my head. I want to go for a run. So you go and you use your body, you exert your body for however long you go for, you come back and you feel calmer. Your body feels looser. You feel like you've lost some of that anxiety. The thoughts in your head are maybe a bit quieter, and then later you can come back and deal with them in a logical, rational way. But your body has done this physical thing of dealing with your emotion. It's done a real job of processing your physical emotion. So if we think of that as something like an article on Wikipedia about anger or grief or loss or something, and there's everybody's thoughts there, and it has lots of quotations and lots of links, and it's quite dense, or maybe not on Wikipedia. And then that, as opposed to a poem about grief or loss, that is a particular articulation using words, as is the article, but that touches you in a way that this absolutely doesn't. And one way that I view choreography is as that physical articulation of the processing that our body does. So it's articulating that. So imagine with me, you've paid £25 and you're sitting in your theatre seat. On the ground floor, you've only paid £11 because you have a restricted view. But I'm going to talk you through it as we go, so don't worry too much. So the lights go down, the stage is dark, and then a small pool of light arrives on the stage, and a woman steps into it and sinks to her knees. And she sweeps around her on the floor, and she pulls something close, and shoots it away from her, and tries to grab it back. And she rocks, and she breathes, and she walks forwards. And a second woman joins her. And they see what surrounds them, and they pull something precious close to them, and maybe it's snatched away from them, and that hurts. And they breathe, and they rock, and they walk forwards because this is life. And a third woman joins, and they see their lives, and they find this thing, maybe a relationship that's not good for them, and they let it go, but they try to grab it back to them, and they have to think and breathe, but we have to walk forwards because this is life. And maybe you know it. You survey what's in your life, and you see this thing. Maybe it's a job you've worked hard for. Maybe you're made redundant. What do? You think, and you breathe, and you have to walk forwards because we keep going in life. So at times, dance can be, I think of it as this physical articulation, like a poem, of experiences that we have in our life. And so as audience members, if you're open, you can see what's on the stage, and you can see that as an offering to sift through things in your own life. And that's a real job of art, I think. Another role in that, as the artist, being a choreographer, put myself in that category. The Victorian painter George Watts, when he was asked what should a picture say, he said, and I paraphrase, well, if the painter paints the clouds or the sea or the flowers, then the person seeing the painting should never again look at the clouds or the sea or the flowers in the same way, because the artist has seen something new and he shared that with them. So I think that is a job that dancers, choreographers, people who work with the body can have in society, of us seeing the body in a different way. A way that's not sort of 2D like this. A way that's not a machine that gets us from A to B. Maybe you don't notice your body until something goes wrong. My dad said that when he had a back problem. My body's been working fine for 50 odd years, and then it goes wrong, and then he notices it. But can we look at the body in a new way? What can your body do? How can we explore our bodies? Maybe you already have a movement practice. Maybe you already go running. maybe you do yoga, maybe you do Pilates. Can you put your head into your body? Give your head space, give your body space, to think what's going on. Apply your mind to how your body is moving and really give it freedom to create and to explore. Because I think if we allow our bodies, which are thinking and responsive, time and space to really think and really respond, then that can work together with our minds and we become more embodied. And that's quite a buzzword at the moment, being embodied. And as more and more embodied people, then we can be more responsive to people around us. We can make clear decisions, emotionally intelligent decisions. We can be responsive to our surroundings. And I wonder whether that's something that can be applicable in people's lives, in business, in family life, rather than this separation of head and body. So maybe if you don't have a movement practice, I would suggest that you find something to start. Just go clubbing to start with. I dance like this when I go clubbing. I clear a space, and then I become the Duracell bunny and just do sort of aerobics videos. Maybe do that. Or if you cycle a lot, then change your practice. Go kayaking, lower body to upper body. Change the way that your mind thinks about your body. And you will find that there's so much potential and creativity in there that causes you to view other people with greater potential and creativity as well. Because we see the whole person, not just what their brain output is. So that would be my encouragement today, to explore something of your own body, find a new movement practice, and encourage others to do so as well. And then maybe that will help you to see others in a greater light, all of us to see others in a greater light always. More potential and more creativity. Thank you very much.